we do still share common ground. It's getting harder. And I think it will be harder if I was filming this week, than when I was out 2 years ago. But I know the truth enough that if we did a bit more of that, we could see past those headlines, which are often overstating what's really going on. We are very, very divided, and we're still not as divided as they would have us believe.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Guy Kawasaki. This is the Remarkable People podcast. And as you know, because I've said it now 300 times, we're on this quest and mission to find inspiring and informational and, quite frankly, remarkable people. And we found another one. And I hope I get his name right because he said no one has ever mispronounced his name. I don't want to read the first one. It's Baratunde Thurston. Did I get that right?
You
Yeah. You
crushed it,
see that?
Guy.
Yeah.
Yes, that was
Now,
most excellent.
I like to have a short introduction of people, but he's a difficult one to introduce because he's like a cultural critic, he's a comic, he's a writer, he's a commentator. Uh, he has this great series called American Outdoors, and he also has a podcast called Life with Machines. And by the way, he just won some Signal Awards, so congratulations, Baratunde.
Now I have to over enunciate your name, Guy.
You can call me Guy. Yeah.
Guy Kawasaki.
Yeah. So you won some Signal Awards. What does that
Yes.
mean? Because
You know,
we have never won an award for this podcast. So.
this was our first award for Life with Machines. It's a 1-year-old show, and it's a new awards thing. So I wasn't even sure what it might mean, but then I look at who else was in the company of victors, and it was some serious people. It's NPR and the Financial Times and Colin and Samir with their big YouTube show. So they say that they're making a show to acknowledge people who shape culture and shows who shape culture. And certainly for our show, Life with Machines, it's really not about tech and AI as much as it is about people and us setting the right culture to live well with tech and not just survive tech, which is too often the dynamic we're finding ourselves in these days.
So I have a question here. So if your mom asks you, son, what exactly do you do? What do you tell her?
I say, hopefully, make you proud. That's what I do, and what I would tell my mother is that I am using my voice as best I can to weave a better story of us and how we might live well with our fellow humans, with our fellow life forms on this planet, and increasingly with these machines.
All right. So so you tell your mother that, and then will you answer for me? How did the R in your name become an R instead of a B? Because Babatunde is about, the father returns or something like that. So did they make a typo on the birth certificate or were they trying to get a custom license plate and, Babatunde was already taken? Like, what's the deal
Yo,
there?
guys got jokes. Good morning. I'm waking up. The coffee didn't do as much as your opening lines about my name. This is great. There actually was a typo on my birth certificate, but it was in my middle. But it was my middle name, not my first name.
Oh,
So you're right. You're right, and you're wrong. We'll get to that. My parents found my name in a book. It was the late '70s, and a lot of Black Americans were trying to find their way back to Mother Africa, and plane tickets were way too expensive. So they thought, all right, we will import these names and attach them to our kids as a way to reforge a connection severed by the United States and our system of chattel slavery and total disruption of lineage and culture and language and self-determination. So this book had a bunch of African names in it. And there's a bunch of us who were born in the late '70s and early '80s who have no direct African ancestry that we can cite, but have Ghanaian names and mostly West African names. And the book identified Babatunde. It's a very popular Yoruba name from the Nigeria region. And it said that you could change it to Baratunde if you so choose, that they were kind of interchangeable letters. They are not. I have been lovingly reminded of this just this weekend. I met a Nigerian who brought this to my attention and then caught himself and he's like, "You've probably been asked this many times before at this point in your life, haven't you?" It's like, I have from early childhood through to now my late 40s, and it's a good question, and the answer is slavery. So I blame it on the system of enslavement, and then I'm grateful to the Yoruba people for not taking too much offense.
Wow. I That's a great story. I don't know if it's politically correct to say this, which is probably why I don't win any signal awards, but I have to tell you, Babatunde or Baratunde, that every Nigerian I know is a remarkable person. So there's the CMO of Autodesk, right? There is this doctor in Canada that Mattel made a doll about, right? And finally, like the pinnacle of Nigerian awesomeness to me is Lovey in Chicago.
Lovey Ajayi, yes.
Right, right, right. And then now I meet you, so like I want to be like honorary Nigerian. I mean, I just
I want to be honorary Nigerian. I did the 23andMe thing years ago, and I do have, according to that data set, ancestry in the region that is now called Nigeria. All of these borders and names were created largely by European powers, but the odds are quite high that my ancestors are from the same region as the people of Nigeria's ancestors are. So I take a little solace in that and just try to wear the name well. My mother was trying to um, attach this meaning of father returns in my birth, and she was really attempting to honor her grandfather, who she loved a lot. The book also said that the name could mean one who is chosen, which is not the chosen one. I got to be real clear about that. That's a high pressure, high mortality rate occupation. I am not interested in that. I'm not applying for that or declaring for that. But I was very late to show up after she had several miscarriages. And so there was a lot of strain and anxiety leading up to my birth and a lot of relief once I decided to finally show up.
and where does she live right now?
In the afterlife, my mother
Oh, I'm
passed
sorry. I
away
didn't realize that.
20
Yeah.
years ago, almost to the day.
Uh-huh. All right. Yes. um, as I was doing my research on you, I said, this guy, he's kind of like a little bit Marquez Brownlee. He's a little bit like Bear Grylls, and he's a little bit like L.A. Mistel, all rolled into one. I mean, you are just a Renaissance kind of guy, and yeah, I was really really impressed. Now, can I go into your dark past and ask a question of, all right, so you work for the Onion, right?
I used to, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So back then in the Onion, like I had this impression that, if you were a writer or a producer, working for the Onion, you really had to struggle. You had to, how can we make fun of this president? How can we make fun of this CEO? You really had to be creative and stuff. And is that how it was? Because like it seems to me today, working for the Onion is almost easy. I mean, all you have to do is like, well, why don't we have an episode of The Onion where the president of the United States is in a jet wearing a crown and he's dropping shit on everybody? And everybody would say, well, that is the most ridiculous thing. How could you have an episode of The Onion about that? So, how did The Onion work back when you had to really be creative to get funny
Yeah.
stories?
Thank you. It is, I wouldn't say today it's easy. I don't work there anymore. I am a subscriber, though, proudly so, and love what they've continued to be during all these changes in politics and media and tech and whatnot. Back then, there were similar concerns. We keep moving the ball. or moving the threshold of like what is success and what is even satire. So back then, George W. Bush seemed, beyond satire. People said it was over, and it wasn't. I sit here right now. I'm in Lower Manhattan, staring at the World Trade Center just out my window, and that was a big moment for the Onion. I hadn't worked there at the time, but how do you take such a moment of tragedy and turn it into healing slash comedy slash satire? So I showed up to an institution that was really great at that, at finding a joke where others thought there could be none, and that sort of pushing the bounds. What I saw in the room was thinking, a lot of thinking, and people who were in touch beyond just being New York City dwellers. There was, the Onion was not an elite institution in terms of the people who went there. It was people who went to state school in Madison, Wisconsin, or people who dropped out of school. And so it was really area man, area woman kind of energy and vibes. And I think that has helped that institution, stay grounded throughout its whole history. And then I saw debates. There was a lot of stuff that never got published because it felt too lazy or too easy or maybe too obvious, or like it was picking on, targeting sort of the wrong party in terms of how that joke would be structured and laid out. And then lastly, the Onion tapped. There was the core writers' room, but there's also this network of contributors who were around the world, and that allowed the organization. It wasn't quite crowdsourcing, but you have this work from home network essentially of people who aren't full time doing this. They're living their lives somewhere in Australia, all over the U.S. I feel like there were some in Europe too, and you just have multiple perspectives. It involved a word that I don't think we're allowed to use anymore. One of these banned words, diversity. And so there was I'm probably gonna have to pay a $10,000 fine to Brendan Carr just for using that on the internet. But I'll say it again: diversity.
It's 20 grand.
Yeah. So and it wasn't like a very racially diverse place, but it was an economically and geographically diverse place. And I think I saw people trying real hard to be sharp, to be thoughtful, to be original, and to be funny. And that's a hard game to play over 20 years now and still be going.
Sounds a little bit like the literary version of the Macintosh division. Seriously.
Really.
Yeah.
There's a shared aesthetic. There's an appreciation for craft and quality. There's some insularness, a little bit of we're better than the others trying to do the same thing. There's a commitment to quality. Yeah. We should have all gotten shares in Apple at the time. Thank you. I agree with you guys.
Listen, I have 4 shares of Apple, so yeah.
Hold on for dear life, as they say.
There are front desk receptionists at Apple who have made more money from Apple than me. I guarantee you that. So anyway, and now I go to the Apple store. I stand in line. I pay full retail like any fool. I've come a long way. Yeah. That would be like Ferdinand Porsche's going into a Porsche dealer and being on the wait list for a 911. Well, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, it keeps you grounded. Right? I'm just like you. I'm just people.
Yeah. You're just like me, except you have Signal Awards and I don't. But anyway,
we're gonna get you some Signal Awards for your remarkable podcast about remarkable people. Yeah.
I'm gonna have a write-in campaign. Listen,
there you go.
So I saw your TED Talk, and before I watched the TED Talk, I read the review of the TED Talk, and it said, this is one of the most magnificent TED Talks ever. And I said, wow, how can that be? And so I watched it, and the guy was right. I don't know who said that. Some white dude said it was a great TED Talk, and and just from besides the message, which was magnificent, the way you use your slides, the way the text changed and the text changed color and all that. Man, you must have rehearsed that 100 times. That was extremely well done. Yeah. It was.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a painful, powerful message. The title of the talk is How to Deconstruct Racism one headline at a time. And I was commenting on this phenomenon of white people calling the cops on very innocent Black people whose only crime was being Black in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I was angered by this relentless onslaught of first, images of police killing Black people, like that. That's been a thing for a while, but then you start to see the upstream of that. Like, well, how did the police end up there? Well, sometimes it's a quote unquote barbecue Becky, who doesn't think Black people should be barbecuing, unlike Merritt in Oakland, or Permit Patty, who's like telling this little girl she needs a permit to sell lemonade on the street, and things like that. So yeah, I did a dance with the technology to try to choreograph some movement and not just be like a dude angry about racism. And I had some really good partnership in it. I mean, in many ways, my computer has been my creative partner for a really long time. Born in '77, had a Apple IIe early in the day, and so my whole childhood was deeply affected by co-creating, and then using Keynote and Slideshow to kind of almost like a puppet, right? And doing this back and forth between me and the slides, so it could land some of the jokes for me, and yeah, I got to work out that timing. But the concept began as a game, and I want to thank Anil Dash. He was running a company at the time called Glitch, and the very first version of this, I workshopped with them a few blocks from where I am right now. It was Lower Manhattan, actually, in like 2018, I think. And we had designed an interactive game, sort of a real or not headline picking game, inspired by my time at The Onion, where the headline really is such a strong element of the comedy and the statements, but also this racial message and this justice message that I was trying to bring forth without like a lecture tone. So we built a prototype together on the Glitch platform, and I presented it at the XOXO conference in Portland, Oregon. Sometimes we could call it a occupied Portland, Oregon, thanks to the excess of military personnel who have somehow found their way there. And I hope they find their way back home to their bases and to their families, where I'm sure they'd rather be. But until then, let the stuffed animals and inflatable frogs show them a jolly good time with street performance art. So yeah, that's a long answer. I did rehearse it a lot. I ran it in different stages and places. I rehearsed it with the TED people, and I just tried to get like deeper and deeper into it. So by the time it got on that TED stage, it really was like I had been almost like in a residency, in terms of doing this performance, much more than just a talk. And I was shooting for, like, I wanted to move people and shock people. I also wanted to disarm them and really make them laugh, and try to do both those things at the same time. And
Yeah,
it still works, I think. So.
I tell you, everybody listening to this podcast, you should go watch that TED Talk. I mean, not, as I said, the message is magnificent, but just the technique and how you did it with no big graphics and all that kind of magical effects. It's just text and colors, and it's really, really, really magnificent. And I got to tell you that a couple of weeks ago, when there was the Pentagon offsite at the Ritz-Carlton Quantico, and then there was like a lot of people were saying, Pete Hegseth gave a speech like a TED Talk, and was up there on the stage ranting and raving. And I was offended by that, because I have given many TED Talks. I've seen TED Talks like that. That's not what a TED Talk is like. It's bullshit. That's a very unfair comparison. But I digress. And I'm in Hawaii right now, Baratunde, and when I see a white guy in a pool, I'm going to call the police and see what happens. So now,
I mean, just make sure he has his papers on him. That's all. That's all. You're just trying to keep America safe. And I respect that. I respect that. Yeah.
They better not be having a picnic and being in the pool. But anyway, so can I ask you? This is more of a serious question. Do you think the time has come that there needs to be a Hispanic version of your TED Talk?
Oh, huh. Why do you ask?
Well, because it seems to me that if you're Hispanic male today, you got some of the same kind of issues, and and we need the Hispanic Baratunde to give that talk about what it's like to be a male
Yeah.
Hispanic man in America right now.
Well, I appreciate the credit you're giving me. While I do think my talk removed 98% of racism in America, there remains a really immovable 2%. I don't know what to do about that. So I just be cautious in encouraging other racial and ethnic groups to follow my lead. You may not get there with the one TED Talk. One of the things I tried to do in that talk is, what you're referring to with the just the use of words, is I was deconstructing sentences and highlighting sort of the grammar of the headline, but also revealing the structure of power in society. And at the end, I take this jump from all these headlines about white people doing X to black people to men doing X to women. And if we and the point wasn't just to highlight oppressive structures, it was to remind us that we can change that structure and reorder those words, change the verbs, and do something different with our power. And so, executive harasses female employee could become executive mentors female employee, right? It's just like a real simple substitution. And the subjects and the objects can also be played around with. So essentially, I offered an open source, extensible data framework for justice that I think would apply whether you're, Latino or Muslim, or you just look brownish, which is, quite the charge of suspicion, and apparently justifies, use of Black Hawk helicopters in American cities right now. So we could all use a reminder of that, and for those who are not in those smaller but growing minority groups, the way this system is going, there's another set of sentences which, we've heard through history. First, they came for X and I did nothing because I wasn't X. Then they came for Y. And so I think we're potentially in that scenario as well. So if you're not, a black person, if you're not, brownish, give it a little more time, right? They're already weaponizing and abusing the powers of the state just against people who think different and express their free speech and criticize the government. And that's really not what the United States of America is supposed to be about. So let's remember ourselves.
What I really want to ask you is, so do you think it's harder to be a Mexican man or a black man in America today?
I really I really reject the premise because while I have meddled in the oppression Olympics myself, I've done some great arguments for my own suffering against the suffering of others. I think that's not a useful competition. And in terms of the difficulty of being, I really do. I mean this. I think it is actually hard to be a white man in this society right now, but not for the reasons that like a Pete Hegseth might say, who struggles to do a pull up effectively. Um, I think if you are like, there's so many concerns for the well-being of people of color because various forms of oppression and, internment camps and forced labor and, dehumanization, yada yada yada. We know all that. But there's another type of loss for the people who benefited from all that. And if you've grown up in a story that says the only way you can be is to put somebody else beneath you, that is a very sad narrative to be force fed, to be told to accept as normal, to expect that. And to grow up with a culture of fear and insecurity around your own position is really sad to me. To fear people who look different, because the most you can think of about their impact on your life is what they can take from you as opposed to what they can offer you. You're missing out on so much of what it means to be alive if your default setting is assumption of threat and fear of loss. And the world has so much more to offer, and life doesn't work that way. Like the tree doesn't fear the bird, right? The tree needs the bird to help with its life force and pollination, the flower and the roots, and like everything's interconnected. And we're not separate from life. We're a part of it. This is something I was able to beautifully learn even more deeply while I was making America Outdoors, and I'm connecting with people. And I think our business leaders and our tech leaders need to be reminded that we're connected with and interdependent with the earth. So yeah, it can be very hard to be a Black man or a Mexican man. It'd be even harder to be a woman because of the way we've set up social and economic rules. But I feel the most sad about those who think the only way to be is to be alone.
So that's kind of a drop the mic moment in this podcast. So maybe we should just end it right here. But no, I'm going to push forward. So, okay, just one podcaster to another. You just used the metaphor of, the tree shouldn't fear the bird, right? Did you just come up with that in real time, or have you used that before? Because that is a freaking brilliant metaphor. Like, I want to know, is your brain so fast that you're answering Guy Kawasaki? Say, oh, why don't I come up with a metaphor about a tree not fearing the bird? I mean, so have you used that 50 times before, or is that brand new?
Yeah. I've never used that before.
Wow.
However, I live in a place mentally and attempt to spiritually where I try to anchor into that truth. And one of the things that I've been trying to learn and to share is this through line of interdependence, that like Western culture, European culture, modern life demands that we become further separate, from each other, from the earth, from our history. The technological tools being promoted right now are selling loneliness. You don't need people, you don't need employees, you don't need human relationships, you don't need human friends. Like, here's an AI companion for you. Here's an AI agent that can do the job of all these people for you. So you can build a $1 billion company all by yourself, as if that's a feature and not the most dangerous bug of all. So I'm residing in that space, and I've been learning a lot over the past couple of years about the deeper truth of interdependence, even to the foundation of the United States, through indigenous democracies that predate our own. And so the metaphor of trees and birds, I've never said that before, but I have felt and thought and said that we need to be able to see trees as more than just resources to turn into lumber to build houses. We have to see them as our lungs beyond our bodies. And that recognition is one I found a few years ago, and I've repeated that one a lot. The trees and birds, that was a Guy Kawasaki exclusive and original, but it is built on a body of experience and exposure that I've been leaning into for the past couple of years.
This is why you're Baratunde Thurston and I'm not, man. I appreciate, let's just say I appreciate the genius of what that simple statement took. Let's just say, okay. So
thank you, man. Thank you.
So speaking
we all know it. We all know that truth, and it's time, maybe now more than ever, to reconcile our business systems and our political and governing systems to acknowledge that essential truth. And we have a beautiful opportunity to do that. So I'm hoping we seize it or are forced to do so.
Well, we got a great segue here. So talking about interdependence, this American Outdoor series, you're going all over the country and you're looking at snakes and you're getting rice and, all this kind of stuff. But do you think if you did that now, is the feeling still the same? When you get past the CNN headlines and the Fox headlines, when you're actually in this place with these people, Do you get a very different feeling from people that's not in the headlines, not the drama, not the conflict?
Yes. And headline is an important jumping off point. What I got to experience making that show, and what a lot of us get to experience when we leave our screens and our human made infrastructure, is we leave the head and get back into the body. And the head can be a source of a lot of confusion. We tell a bunch of stories up there. We are influenced by propaganda, which is promoted to us for profit, and sometimes don't recognize that. So I got to have a bodily experience with people that wasn't about bullet points and words and argument. It was about movement together. It was about breathing together. It was about accomplishing something as simple as walking down this path together, or navigating this waterway in this boat together, or learning how to shoot these, clay targets together. But it was a really small example of what we've been missing at the collective level, which is shared reality, shared experience, shared purpose. Less about rhetoric and more about an embodied sense of being together. And it was humble. It was a real humble reminder that we do still share common ground. It's getting harder, and I think it will be harder if I was filming this week, than when I was out 2 years ago. But I know the truth enough that if we did a bit more of that, we could see past those headlines, which are often overstating what's really going on. We are very, very divided, and we're still not as divided as they would have us believe about ourselves.
So you're saying it would be harder to shoot American outdoors now because the divisions are greater?
I think it would be both more necessary and more beautiful right now, and harder. Sometimes I'll give you some examples. So we filmed this series in 2021, 2022, 2023. And I was in a lot of places that I wouldn't naturally end up. I spent a ton of time in the Southeast and in very rural small towns in Florida, in Georgia, in Arkansas, and in very, very conservative places in Utah and Idaho. It's a big country. There's America, and they don't often meet. And I got to visit both, and they both got a lot to offer. But while we were filming, I would see signs. We did this episode along the Suwannee River in that crosses Georgia and Florida. Really important river for life, human and otherwise. And I'd see these big banners on the river, almost like highway billboards, and they were proclaiming "fuck Joe Biden." Now, first of all, who is that for? Is that for the alligator turtle? Like, who are you trying to convince, right? And is that the best you have? And I would see this in people's front yards, and there's kids, like their kids, running around. And I have very strong political leanings in the other direction, but I would never take out like a full profane ad like that. It lowers you, it lowers your whole community, and you're not really saying anything about Joe Biden. You're saying everything about yourself. Um, we were in that same shoot as we were setting up to film with the manatees. 90% of the people, 95% of the people, gracious and great, and we all are here for these manatees. One guy harassing my crew. Uh, you guys are trying to bring your liberal values here, and my Australian film, DP, director of photography, he's like, mate, we're making a nature show. Like, we're trying to film manatees. But this guy wouldn't let go. Like, he was trying to provoke a confrontation and more. So I know that kind of tone and attitude, I would encounter that even more if we were out, this week, for example. And that, I think, would make things harder. It's very sad.
Wow. I don't, I don't even know what to say about something like that.
It's, people follow. Look, I'm sure you have people who listen to this show who believe all kind of things, who voted all kind of ways, and that's fine for the most part. But I think outside of what people's thoughts are about taxes or immigration, there is a basic human decency and human dignity thing that we gotta remind ourselves of. And do we want our children behaving the way we see our leaders behaving? If the answer is no, we should stop that. And so what I experienced out there was people lowering themselves to the level of their political leadership. And that is just objectively not a good thing, right? We coarsen everything. We start to other each other. We start to dehumanize. And that becomes policy. And then it becomes even easier to do what's happening now, right? We're just snatching kids out of their apartments at the end of militarized armed guns while they're naked at 3 in the morning. We shouldn't be here. And we're okay. So we're still drinking our coffee and we're still going to work. And apparently the stock market's doing great because of 7 companies. And that's definitely not a problem. It's definitely not a problem that the S&P 500 is relying on 7 companies for a third of its value. So we're just going to ignore all this and pretend everything's great. We're literally out of balance. So yeah, you can have thoughts about immigration, etc. But we got to agree we don't behave this way toward each other. We don't teach our kids to behave this way toward us or each other. And that's we got to just repeat that. This is some basic stuff.
I mean, this would be like the tree killing the bird, right? I mean,
Right. And the thing is, once we start doing that, ecosystems, yes, there are predators and prey, but there is also balance. And we're out of balance in a lot of different ways. We're out of balance politically, we're out of balance economically. Um, and if we don't correct that, the system long term balances itself. We're still within the wheel of life. We'll be brought into balance by climate change, right? By disease, by all kinds of forces. But I'd so much rather choose the self-correcting method, right? We can be more compassionate about it. We can make money along the way. We can build beautiful things together. So as our FCC chair Brendan Carr might say, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way, and that goes for balance in our system. And so currently, I think too many of us are choosing the hard way.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when you hear all these tech bros and they say, we got to settle and, move to Mars because the Earth is going to it seems so you're telling me that we're going to go to some place tens of millions of miles away that is completely the most hostile place to human life. Wouldn't it just be easier to fix the Earth than to move all that shit over to Mars? But what do I know? That's why I'm not a billionaire. So
No, you know a lot because you also value something more than money. And I think there's such a trap and a lie that money fixes things. At a certain point, yes, we could fix roads with money, but we can't fix holes in our hearts with money. We can't fix lack of spine and backbone with money. Sometimes it makes it worse. What's the point of making all these billions if you're just gonna bend the knee to a really petty wannabe tyrant who flip flops on things on a daily basis and uses presidential power and authority and resources to mock up a video of King Trump's plane dumping feces on people exercising their First Amendment rights in America? That's your king? It's like the line from Black Panther. Is this your king? If we're gonna do the king thing in America, I can think of a lot better candidates than this guy. You know what I mean? This is really shameful. And so for the captains of industry with all of their resource and self-proclaimed brilliance, this is dumb. This is really, really stupid. And it's a waste. Why'd you spend all that time hoarding all those resources just to give them away to a little petty mob guy who's shaking you down for a percentage of sales? Really? This is what all your education has led you to? Have you read any of the books in your large language models that you stole? What is going on here? Ask your own AI what to do next. I don't think it would suggest you do what you're doing. So yeah, I want these guys to find their human side too, because I don't want to be vilifying and making them out like they're not people. They are, but they seem very disconnected
Y-
from life,
Yeah.
and from like
You know,
humanity.
I I have made a decision that I am going to limit my net worth to under $1 billion, because I swear at a billion, something happens to your brain. And now I'm nowhere close, so I'm pretty sure I'm not going to have billionaire's disease. But
Way
I
to
gotta
achieve your
say,
goals. I love that commitment.
I
I love that.
just don't get it, because whenever I was raised by my family, my father and mother, always believed that, if you're fortunate, you go through these stages in life where first you learn, then you earn, and then you're supposed to return. But it seems to me these people, they learn, they earn, and then they burn. The Has it ever occurred to you that maybe you should take the high road and make society better, not just increase the value of crypto, and and make sure that long-term capital gains is lower for the billionaire class? I do not understand this at all, I gotta
Well,
say.
here's the, I think, a true thing. These individuals, someone like a Mark Zuckerberg, you know, and it's not just him, but he's just like, to put a name to the examples and not be so vague about billionaire. Okay, let's say someone like Mark. I don't think it's just down to individuals who should make better choices. I think we make choices in the context of the systems we're in and of the incentives that we have and of the social groups that we're a part of. And we have let the guardrails off. We, not Mark, right? We decided to celebrate and lionize business people as the only type of leadership that has any value. And we decided that political leadership was good in only insofar as it mimicked business leadership. And we decided that we'd rather torch our social safety net and let people swim on their own than to take care of each other. Now, I didn't decide that. I doubt you did, but the outputs of our political system have led us there, and it's been happening since long before that particular person, Mark, was even born. We're in this like 50-year project of dismantling the commons and public space and hyper valuing wealth concentration and hoarding. And that's a very particular agenda. And the people seeking that have used our political system to achieve that outcome. So we're living with the consequences of a bunch of collective choices to set the field in a certain way. So we can't be totally surprised that folks are operating within the rules of that game, playing, to us, it looks dirty, but the refs aren't calling them. It's because the rules of the game have been changed to favor that kind of behavior. So we can't just be appealing to the individual. Hey, you should give more of your money away. Why? I clearly get more advantage this way, and I've been raised from zero to pursue personal advantage. So we got to do a couple of things. We got to like collectively reset some of these system rules, and I think we got to get below the surface even of rules. And I had a recent conversation with General Stan McChrystal at the Masters of Scale Summit. He has a beautiful book about character, and he's saying, we need to have a more of a national conversation about character. Like, who are we? And this comes to some of the points that you and I talked about earlier in this conversation about some of the democracy that was already here before any Europeans ever showed up on this land. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy, to name it, often known as the Iroquois, had a practicing super functional democracy still running to this day. It's literally the longest running in the world, not ours. We were inspired in part by them. But there are some deeply held principles that undergird it. And so, the role of women being equal in governance, the respect for nature and having a seat at the table, long term decision making, along with federalism and impeachment and liberty and justice for all. Like, we already have a good set. We should expand on that and recommit to that. And fortunately, we got a big birthday party coming up in July 2026, 250 years since the Declaration of Independence. And what a time to revisit our founding principles and ask ourselves, are we still committed to those? And what else might we commit to in a refounding moment? If the wheels are going to fall off the car anyway, we might as well question the whole vehicle and decide where we want to go and how do we want to get there.
Yeah, we can just fire some artillery shells over the highway and, celebrate that way. What's the problem? I
We could,
mean,
and obviously an MMA match on the White House lawn
oh
is
yeah, yeah. And
absolutely
then
what the
there'll be a
founding
reception
fathers
in the
dreamt
new
of.
ballroom after
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So again,
yeah.
we are faced with overwhelming opportunity to get right, and every
After
day reminds us. We get this bigger and bigger gap. Like, I want someone read the Declaration of Independence. It's pretty good. I mean, it is it's like a list of grievances against a particular person in the form of King George. So it comes across a little whiny, but it also declares some things. The right of the people to change their government if it's not meeting their needs and meeting the common good. There's so much value in that. So just read that and then look out your window or at the nearest screen in your life. Look at the decisions and outcomes of the society that you're in, of how your government people are operating, and ask yourself, are we living in alignment with that? And if not, how do we update that document to better reflect who we are? Like, let's just get really honest about it and be like, we the petty, in order to form a less perfect union, will use our authority and overwhelming might to troll and subjugate the weakest among us. Like, that would be an honest declaration, right? And we could just do that. Let's keep it real, America. Or we could decide that even those words were not enough and that we must rise to something greater, even as some seek to lower us all. We the living declare interdependence with all forms of life because it's really the only way through. This is the opportunity in front of us.
When this episode gets out, Baratunde, you and we might end up in Manzanar, and we can be roommates. And you can
I would
have
love to be your
you can
roommate
have
in
the upper
education.
bunk because I will be too old to climb up to the upper bunk, but we might get arrested and carted off. Yeah, so
I am enjoying these last moments of free speech with you guys.
oh my God! Here, all right. So now tell me about AI.
Yeah.
You know, you have a series about life with machines. So give me the gist of what you think. Is it the worst thing or the best thing that ever happened?
I reject binaries, man. But I'll take your setup and I'll pivot. I'll redirect off of that. Our goal with this show is to create a place where we can explore how to live well with technology and not just endure it. How to support the use of tech that helps our relationships with ourselves, with each other, and with the earth. And along the way, we're going to be critical when it's called for. We're going to be curious because that's probably the most important thing. We're going to try to be clear and occasionally comedic because this stuff is absurd. And so that's the broad mandate. Life with machines, very purposeful title. I love language. I believe in choosing words as best as possible. It's not machine life. I'm not about that. We're not about that. I don't think we collectively should be about that. We're about life. And I don't think we're going to really have any life without machines. That ship has sailed, so to speak. But what kind of life? That's what we should be asking ourselves. How do we want to feel when we interact with these technologies? What do we want the outcomes to be? If we want massive further concentrating of wealth and power, then great. Let's stay on the set course. Let's keep doing what we're doing. If we want something radical like peace or happiness or contentment or enough, then let's reorient to have our use and design of these technologies to support those goals. But what my big take around AI isn't like yay I or nay I. It's really like, for what? We're skipping that question. We have no goals with so much of this. The goal seems to be like, let's keep up with whatever Sam Altman imagines for us. No, he's not my king either. Right? And so we should all, whether we're in a business or a school or a city or a household, start with like, what do you want? What do you need? Okay, cool. Can you establish that first? Don't even bring tech into it. What do you want? What do you need? What do you want and need for the people you care about, for your community? Let's expand that I into like a we. And then, all right, how do we get there with the technology? What types of technology do we need? What's the infrastructure it should be set up on? What kind of business models? Multiple, not just private equity and venture backed, billionaires trying to become trillionaires. That is good for a certain type of innovation, but not all of society. That's going to only benefit that part of society by definition. So that's where we're trying to get, with the types of inquiry we have with the show. YouTube is our primary distribution now. Substack, where we write more, and then we do a lot of experiments. The last big thing I will say is we don't just want to pontificate and mouth off and pop off. It's fun, and I love words more than most, but we got to do. We got to engage. And I know there's a lot of folks out there who are really alarmed about AI and against it and against the people who are for it. And I do not think our path to the future can be like, I don't touch AI. So we've made a choice at Life with Machines. Like, we definitely touch AI. We use it a lot. We've pushed beyond normal use and beyond reasonable use for the purpose of learning and sharing what we find out. So we built an AI as a co-producer character for the show. We named them Blair. We treat them more like a teammate than a tool, because I think that's the transition we're on. And we're figuring out, okay, what feels good? What feels weird? What's absurd and what's exciting? And hopefully we can be of some service in helping the rest of us who don't have that kind of time decide, what we should be demanding and building.
And and if I'm listening to this podcast and
Yeah.
I'm doing fist pumps in the air because I agree with you, and I'm not Sam Altman, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg, I'm not Tim Cook, I'm not Mark Andreessen, I'm not Peter Thiel. What am I supposed to do? These 7 or 10 people seem to control the world.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things, and I'm still figuring out, is there like a 5-point action pack for people who hear all of what we've just said and are like, okay, so what do I do now? So one, I think mentally be skeptical and curious. If we're just kind of like reading headline level and like overhearing things, then you're going to have some thoughts about what AI is that are not true and are much more capable than practically. So the AI that most people are talking about, understand that that is probabilistic statistical prediction to generate tokens and thus words, essentially, and pixels and other forms of media. It doesn't know anything. It's not your friend. It has no personality. It is a very good mimic, an incredibly useful bullshit artist. Truly, truly. Like, it's the best BS I've ever come across in my life. So much that it has helped me save thousands of dollars in my home and manage home renovation projects I have no business doing. None. But me and my AI buddy, we're a little more capable. So just, basically be curious, engage, learn a bit more than you know. You don't have to become like a data scientist, but learn more than you know. I would also say what you can do is engage, ask questions about, experiment with other human beings. Too much of this technology is foisted on us in an individualistic manner. It's like, I guess I got to apply this software update to my device. I guess I have to figure out how to keep up. I must understand if I'm going to have a job in the future. It's like me, myself, and I. And meanwhile, the folks who are developing this are working very much in a collective. They're coordinating money to affect political outcomes through hundreds of millions of dollars in lobbying. They're literally pooling all of our data, right? They're not going to us one at a time asking permission. They're just taking it, and coordinating amongst themselves on how best to get what they need out of it. So we got to receive this and engage with this in more of a we fashion and like multiplayer versus single player mode. So that's just an orientation thing. And I would also say put it on the agenda. Put AI on the agenda for whatever size society you feel like you have some influence. And spoiler alert, that probably doesn't mean Washington, D.C. right now, but it could mean your school board, could mean your neighborhood commission, could mean your homeowners association, could mean your apartment building. Like, where are you in community with others where you have a little bit of influence, and city council, etc., and just start asking the questions. So how are we thinking about the needs we have and what we want? And is there a way that AI can be helpful in us getting there? It doesn't even have to be like an anti thing. It has to, but make sure that it fits your circumstance. And then ask more questions. Where's the energy for this one coming from? Is it any different for these other ones? And then we start to be able to make more informed choices. That right there would put us in a better place than we already are. And it's just, some stuff off the top of my head right now. It's definitely not the whole answer, but I hope it's a bit helpful.
I think this is the place to end this podcast. I mean, because you're giving us a message of hope, right? I mean, you're like
We got to. We got to. Listen, everything is falling apart. Everything is on fire. We're in a climate crisis. We're in a democracy crisis. We're in an economic crisis. We're in a crisis of crises. Like, that's how bad it is. And there's never true endings. For individuals, yes. For life, no. So endings are also beginnings. And we've been through a lot as people in the United States, as humans on Earth. And we will continue to go through a lot. I would rather orient toward, okay, so what do we want next? Rather than just sitting in the depression and the anger of everything we're losing. Acknowledge the loss, let's mourn, and let's get to designing and building the future. Because we cannot let the people you just named be the architects of our future. Peter Thiel is obsessed with the Antichrist and wants to create a CEO monarch for America. No, thank you. Not even thank you. Just no. I don't appreciate it. I don't appreciate it. And as people who have said to me for many years, when I have been critical of this country, that's so un-American. Like, if you don't like America, you can leave, right? Right? If you want a dictatorship, there are plenty established ones to choose from. That's literally not what we're about here. So the rest of us can whine about it and complain about it. Cool. Let's be in our feelings for a minute. But then we got to start building the future we want, because these guys are already doing that with our money and our water and our energy resources and our psychological and emotional resources. We got to reclaim that, redirect it, have our own vision for the world we want. And I absolutely believe technology and AI will need to be a part of that. I've seen beautiful things that are possible. I've also seen that we leave it to these guys and it will be hard for most of us. And that, I'm not signing up for that. Hope you aren't either.
And I mean this in the most positive and, praiseworthy method. You are a freaking walking TED Talk. My God. I don't mean in a Pete Hegseth sense.
Thank you.
He would never make it on TED Talk, but you are a walking TED Talk, man. So now you're like Jane Goodall plus Marquez Brownlee plus Ellie Meistel. We threw out Bear Grylls. We did.
I will take Jane Goodall over Bear Grylls any day.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to honor her recently. Last week in San Francisco, I was on a panel about her legacy with some incredible people who have been working toward making it real. And she knew what was up. Dr. Jane knew exactly what the deeper truth is. That truth of that interdependence, that all life is interconnected with all other life. And we can try, and in the short term, we can succeed in going it alone. But in the long run, that's to our collective peril. So let's use these big brains of ours. Let's open up these beautiful hearts of ours. Let's connect them. Let's reconnect them for some of us. Let's reconnect them. And then let's be about life. Come on, it's too beautiful to spoil it.
I just want to thank the Remarkable People team also, because there's a lot of people who help make this podcast successful. So there's, of course, Madison Neismer, co-producer, Jeff C., co-producer, Shannon Hernandez, sound design engineer, and Tessa Neismer, also a researcher. So that's who's behind me, Baratunde, and I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
So did I.